I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are opening up this old cold case file from the 1990s.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah, so you untie the string, you open the dusty manila folder, and the official police report inside, well, it reads exactly like a cheap tabloid tragedy.
Oh, totally. Like something straight out of a soap opera.
Exactly. You've got a wealthy businessman's wife, a lowly caretaker, and they're both dead in a remote farmhouse in Haryana. It's somewhere on that desolate stretch between Sonopat and Panabam. And the official police stamp closing out the file. A lover's spat turned murder-suicide. Case closed.
Right, which is, the exact kind of neat, tidy narrative that gives the public the scandalous headline they want to read over their morning tea.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it answers all the surface-level questions while requiring absolutely zero critical thought from anyone involved. The police get to go home. The public gets a juicy story.
But, as we know, the official story is rarely the whole story, which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are stepping into the shoes of investigative journalists to basically rip open that seemingly perfect case file.
Which is always the best part.
It really is. So, using an incredibly detailed source account from the YouTube channel Aman Parkar, we're going to reconstruct the actual timeline of this 1990s Haryana horror story. And looking through these sources, what strikes me immediately is that the cast of characters seems like a complete setup for a classic whodunit.
It really does. I mean, at the center, you have Raghav Malik, right? He's a multi-millionaire businessman based in Delhi.
Super wealthy.
Incredibly wealthy. He holds this massive real estate portfolio, which includes this isolated farmhouse. Then you have his wife, Mohini. And crucially, you have Raju, the caretaker.
Right, the caretaker.
Yeah, and if we are applying an investigative framework here, we have to establish a behavioral baseline. And Raju's baseline is defined by, well, extreme loyalty.
Like almost unbelievably loyal.
Exactly. He started working at that farmhouse when he was 20. He's now 30. That is 10 years of managing a sprawling, isolated property without a single complaint or incident.
That is a massive detail. 10 years of unquestioned trust. So when the inciting incident happens, it just completely shatters that established ecosystem.
It does. It really sets the stage.
Right. So it starts with Raghav calling Raju at the farmhouse to deliver this very specific warning. Raghav says he received a letter from the electricity department, and there is going to be a total power blackout across the region, specifically from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., a complete localized shutdown.
Which is very precise.
Very. And Raghav tells Raju to go into the city and use the cash he had sent earlier to stock up on emergency lights and flashlights.
So put your investigative journalist hat on for a second and look at the parameters of that phone call. A scheduled blackout in an already isolated location. We're looking at the deliberate construction of an environment.
Yeah, because what happens to Raju next feels less like a true crime timeline and way more like a supernatural horror film.
It gets weird so fast.
It really does. So Raju heads into town to buy these supplies as the sun is setting. While he's out, he gets this creeping paranoia that he's being followed.
Like someone is watching him.
Exactly. But he shakes it off, heads back to the isolated farmhouse, cooks his dinner, and get this, he swears he sees someone laughing at him through the window glass.
Oh, that is terrifying.
Right. So he goes outside into the fields to investigate, and right at 9 p.m., exactly when the power dies, he clicks on his new emergency flashlight. And standing out in the field is a terrifying, headless woman.
Wow, just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. Raju completely loses his mind, sprints to the stable, locks himself in, and calls Raghav in a state of absolute hysteria.
And see, if we look at this through a criminological lens, we have to ask why a physical threat is masquerading as a supernatural one.
Right, because ghosts don't usually send advance warnings about power cuts.
Exactly. And the source material notes a very specific, crucial detail about Raghav. He has a severe heart condition. He previously suffered a massive heart attack and barely survived.
Wait, hold on. So you're suggesting this entire haunting wasn't actually to scare the caretaker, but was a dry run for the millionaire?
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
But wait, if someone wants a multimillionaire dead in the 1990s, they hire a professional. I mean, they use a gun or poison or cut the brake lines. Why construct an elaborate Scooby-Doo villain setup?
Because a bullet leaves a ballistic signature, right? Poison leaves a toxicological footprint in a lab. Any traditional weapon invites a homicide investigation, especially when the victim is a high-profile millionaire.
Okay, that makes sense.
But a haunting. If a medically vulnerable man is literally scared to death in a dark house, his heart gives out. The medical examiner looks at his extensive medical history and rules it death by natural causes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the ghost is the perfect, untraceable murder weapon. The terror itself does the physical work of the assassination.
Okay, let's unpack this. I totally see the forensic advantage. It's essentially a lethal psychological operation. But I have a major problem with the mechanics of this plan.
What's the problem?
If the goal is to trap Raghav in the dark and induce a fatal spike in his heart rate, why warn the farmhouse about the 9 p.m. power cut in advance? Why tell them to buy flashlights? Doesn't that just give your target the tools to survive the trap?
It seems counterintuitive, I know, but from a psychological warfare perspective, the warning is actually the most lethal part of the mechanism. Warning the victim weaponizes their own anticipation.
How so? Like, wouldn't being prepared make you calmer?
You'd think so, but think about the biological mechanism of dread. If the lights just randomly snap off, it's a momentary surprise. Your body manages it.
Right, you jump, but you recover.
Exactly. But if you are told at exactly 9 p.m., you'll be plunged into total darkness, your mind starts racing hours in advance. You're watching the clock tick down.
Oh, man. The waiting would be awful.
Right, your amygdala is already firing. Your nervous system is flooding your body with cortisol before the sun even sets. By the time 9 p.m. actually arrives, the victim's psychological defense mechanisms are completely eroded.
Wow. So it's not just about trapping them in the dark. It's about making them marinate in the anxiety of the approaching dark.
That is exactly it.
That is incredibly sinister. And we see that dread fully activated when Raghav finally arrives. He was actually in Mumbai when Raju called him from the stable, so he flies to Delhi, gets his car, and drives straight to the farmhouse. Now, if I'm investigating a crime scene, I always look for the anomaly.
The thing that's out of place.
Yes, the thing that doesn't fit. And when Raghav pulls up, the anomaly is the silence.
The disruption of the 10-year baseline we talked about earlier.
Exactly. For a decade, Raju has been at the gate with his music playing, ready to welcome his boss. This time, the property is dead quiet. Raghav has to search the grounds in the dark until he finally finds his trusted caretaker cowering in the stable.
And Raju's reaction there is key. It isn't relief, is it?
Not at all. He looks at his boss and says, "Aren't you scared? The ghost is standing right behind you."
Notice what Raju is doing there. He is actively escalating the psychological pressure. He is confirming to a man with a weak heart that the invisible threat is already inside the perimeter.
It's pure gaslighting. But Raghav doesn't bite. He actually dismisses it.
Mm-hmm.
He tells Raju to stop acting foolish, says he is exhausted from the flight, and just wants to go to sleep.
Which is quite the reaction to being told a ghost is behind you.
Right. So Raghav leaves his terrified caretaker in the stable and goes inside the dark house alone. He changes his clothes, empties his pockets, and leaves his car keys and house keys on the bedroom side table. He gets into bed, and that is when the trap is fully sprung.
The environment completely turns on him.
It is an absolute auditory assault. Raghav hears a heavy door creak open. He hears glass shattering down the hall.
Just textbook horror movie stuff.
Completely. He steps out of his bedroom and sees a shadow sprinting across the corridor. He tries the light switches, flipping them up and down, and then he hears mocking laughter coming from the darkness.
Which would just break your brain in that situation.
He tries the lights one last time. Nothing. He checks his watch. It is exactly 9 p.m.
What's fascinating here is the execution. It relies on sensory deprivation. They remove his primary sense, his sight, and overload his auditory processing.
The footsteps, the glass, the laughing.
Exactly. This induces a massive catecholamine surge. His body is dumping adrenaline, his heart rate is spiking uncontrollably, but he has no visible target to fight or flee from.
And he chooses to flee, which leads to the classic fatal mistake we see in almost every victim's escape plan.
Oh, the keys.
Yes. Put yourself in Raghav's shoes for a second. You are isolated, you're being hunted in a pitch-black house, you sprint out the front door, you make it to the driveway, you grab the handle of your car, and it's locked because you emptied your pockets and left your keys on the nightstand.
The physical environment has now become a cage. The isolated location, which is usually a luxury for a millionaire, is now his biggest liability.
It's totally weaponized against him.
Right. His only means of escape requires him to walk backward into the exact center of the danger zone.
It's brutal. So he is forced to re-enter the house. He creeps back into the dark hallways, terrified, his chest pounding, trying to convince himself it's just the wind. He makes it to the bedroom, grabs the keys, and heads for the kitchen door.
But he doesn't make it out, does he?
No. As he reaches for the handle, he realizes he's not alone. He hears heavy breathing right behind his neck. He turns around and sees a strange man standing there in the pitch black. And his weak heart simply cannot take the overload. He doesn't have a heart attack, but he completely faints from sheer terror.
So the trap worked, essentially. The untraceable weapon made contact. But this is where the timeline shifts, and our investigation uncovers the first major structural crack in the conspiracy.
Right, because I fully expected the source file to say Raghav died right there on the kitchen floor. But he wakes up, it's 2:50 a.m., he's lying on the cold tiles, it is still completely dark.
And he hears something, right?
Yes. He hears a voice whispering in the same room. A man is on the phone saying, "Madam, I can only make him think he didn't have a heart attack. Should I bury him in the nearby field?"
Imagine the cognitive whiplash Raghav experiences in that moment. You go from believing you're being hunted by a supernatural entity to waking up and realizing the horror was entirely manufactured.
The ghost was basically a guy with a flashlight and a scary mask.
Exactly. There is no ghost. There is just a contractor failing to execute a hit.
So Raghav lies there in the dark for 10 agonizing minutes processing this. And then, at exactly 3 a.m., the scheduled blackout ends. The house floods with light.
The timing is incredible.
Raghav leaps off the floor, grabs a kitchen knife from the counter, and pins the man on the phone against the wall. And when he looks at the ghost who has been terrorizing him, he realizes it's Raju, his incredibly loyal 10-year caretaker.
The betrayal of that baseline trust is absolute. 10 years.
It's staggering, but the hits keep coming. Raju's phone is still active. Raghav looks down at the caller ID, and it reads Mohini Madam. It's his own wife.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Raghav forces Raju to put the phone on speaker. And Mohini doesn't even pause to ask how things went or if he's okay. Her first words are, "Did you kill him?"
Cold-blooded.
She then confirms the details of the contract. She promises Raju that his payment for burying her husband will be a 5% share of the farmhouse property.
Which is a brilliant detail from an investigative standpoint. If we connect this to the bigger picture, she didn't offer a flat cash fee. She offered equity.
Right, a piece of the pie.
Exactly. She weaponized Raju's 10-year attachment to the very land he had been meticulously maintaining. She knew he felt ownership over it, and she exploited that.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This is the moment in the source material where my jaw actually dropped. Think about normal human behavior, right? You just survived an assassination attempt. Your heart almost gave out. Your spouse orchestrated it, and your best employee executed it.
You'd be in shock.
Any normal person would be screaming, pleading for their life, or trying to dial the police.
But Raghav doesn't do any of those things.
No. He leans into the phone, speaking directly to his wife. He tells Mohini to come over to the farmhouse right now and claim her property face to face.
Right.
He actually dares her to look him in the eye.
That is bold.
She arrogantly agrees, saying she'll be there in an hour and a half. Raghav hangs up. He looks at the man who just tried to bury him in a field, and he initiates a negotiation.
He negotiates with his own assassin.
Yes. He tells Raju that when Mohini walks through that door, if Raju drives the knife into her instead, Raghav will give him a 10% share of the property. He outbids his own assassination.
It is a phenomenal display of sociopathic compartmentalization. Raghav strips away all human emotion, betrayal, fear, marital bonds, and treats his own attempted murder like a corporate hostile takeover.
It's exactly like a boardroom negotiation.
It really is. If we look at this through the lens of game theory, Raghav understands the transactional nature of Raju's loyalty. Raju's decade of faithful service was just bought for 5%, therefore logically it can be bought back for 10%.
He just doubles the offer.
Exactly. Raghav reduces the value of human life down to real estate percentages.
And the craziest part, Raju accepts the counteroffer.
Of course he does.
The two men, who were just locked in a life-or-death struggle, now spend an hour and a half pacing around the farmhouse, silently waiting together. Finally, headlights sweep across the window. There's a knock at the door. Raju opens it, and Mohini walks in.
She has no idea what she's walking into.
None. She sees her husband standing there, and she is so confident in her control of the situation that she starts mocking him. She says it's a good thing he woke up, otherwise Raju would have chopped him to pieces in his sleep.
She operates under the fatal assumption that her initial contract with Raju is ironclad. She has no idea she has already been outbid.
The second she finishes mocking him, Raju steps up and drives the kitchen knife straight through her chest. Mohini collapses to the floor, bleeding out. And this is where the investigation hits the final, devastating reveal.
The real twist.
Raghav looks down at his dying wife, and he smiles. He then turns to Raju, who is standing there with blood on his hands, waiting for his 10% equity reward.
And what does Raghav tell?
He casually mentions, "You know how I told you I had important business in Mumbai? Well, I sold this farmhouse a week ago. For cash. I kept all the money.
Hmm.
This property doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to my wife, and it certainly doesn't belong to you. I only came here tonight to pack up my clothes.
Wow. It's a masterclass in ultimate deception. The 5% was a lie. The 10% was a lie. Raju threw away 10 years of honor, terrorized the man who employed him, and committed a brutal, cold-blooded murder for a percentage of absolutely nothing.
The psychological weight of that realization completely breaks Raju.
Hmm.
The knife slips from his hand. He falls to his knees, clutching his head, just sobbing. He asks Raghav, "What am I supposed to do now?"
And Raghav just doesn't care.
Not at all. Proving he's the most dangerous person in this entire story, Raghav just looks at him and says he's not interested. He knew his wife was treacherous. Now he knows his caretaker is too. Raghav walks out the front door, gets in his car, and calmly drives back to Delhi, leaving Raju alone in the dark with a corpse.
Which brings our investigation full circle. We are back to the dusty manila folder, the official police report.
Yes, because a few days later, the news breaks across the country.
Yeah.
And the official story released to the public claims that Raju, the lowly caretaker, and Mohini, the wealthy wife, were carrying on a secret illicit affair.
A classic tabloid narrative.
Right. The media reports they had a lover's spat at the remote farmhouse. Raju killed her in a jealous rage, and then, overcome with intense guilt, he took his own life. Meanwhile, Raghav plays the part of the grieving, shocked widower perfectly for the cameras.
And we really need to dissect why that cover-up worked so flawlessly. I mean, how does a man orchestrate this complex web of double crosses and walk away entirely clean?
As an investigator, I'm baffled the police didn't look deeper into the property sale or the phone records. It feels like basic police work.
They didn't look deeper because Raghav handed them a narrative they were socially conditioned to accept. Think about the class dynamics of 1990s India. You have stark divides between the ultra-wealthy elite and the working class.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
When Raghav feeds the media a story about a poor, covetous servant driven mad by lust for his wealthy employer's wife, society devours it. It plays perfectly into existing class prejudices. It is absolute tabloid catnip.
So he used societal bias as his ultimate shield.
Exactly. A complex financial assassination plot requires a difficult, tedious investigation. But a scandalous crime of passion across class lines, the public wants to believe it. The police want to close the file on it.
It's just easier for everyone.
Right. Rocket didn't just survive. He manipulated the final narrative by controlling the flow of information. He understood that people will always choose a simple, sensational lie over a complicated truth.
He weaponized our own love for sensational gossip against us. It's brilliant, and honestly, it's terrifying.
It reveals that the true mastermind isn't necessarily the one holding the knife. It's the one who gets to write the police report afterward.
That is so true. So as we wrap up this investigative deep dive, let's look at the key takeaways we extracted from the source material. We unspooled a haunting that was meticulously engineered to serve as an untraceable murder weapon.
A brilliant weapon, theoretically.
We watched a decade of established loyalty bought and sold in minutes for percentages of a property that didn't even belong to the buyers. And we saw firsthand the devastating danger of unchecked greed.
Greed that creates a severe tunnel vision. I mean, Raju was so blinded by the promise of property that he never stopped to realize he was just a pawn being moved across someone else's board. He thought he was securing his future, but he was literally digging his own grave.
Which leaves us with a lot to think about. So I want to leave you with a final chilling question to mull over long after this audio stops. The next time you are scrolling through your news feed or watching a true crime documentary and you come across a neat and tidy sensational headline, one that perfectly wraps up with a tragic murder-suicide, blaming the dead while leaving behind a wealthy, untouched, grieving survivor, ask yourself what invisible strings might have been pulled in the dark. When the official story feels just a little too perfect, who is actually writing the history you are consuming?